after that, it was you guys. Did you guys transition into the Avengers or Spider-Man?
Right.
Because you guys did the Ultimate Avengers for Disney XD. Is that right?
We had done Avengers Assemble and Ultimate Spider-Man for
Okay.
them, but we had also done a bunch of stuff with Chris Yost on Earth's Mightiest Heroes stuff as well. We had done some
So Earth
scripts
Mightiest Hero were the first iteration of
of
that
the
Avengers.
pre-Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the Avengers Assemble was really post-Avengers movie. So
Mm-hmm.
it was the core group that was in the Avenger movie, and kind of using the archetypes that Josh had established. These are the kind of the set characters, and with Joe and Joe Quesada and Jeff Loeb, kind of as our conduits for where Marvel Studios was going to take everything. We kind of did the Avengers Assemble, but actually Ultimate Spider-Man was before that, as far as our deep involvement with Marvel
Oh, wow.
animation. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. We were working on Ultimate Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was owned by Sony at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these kind of things, like we could only use certain villains and other stuff we couldn't use in the Spider-Verse. It was a very peculiar set of rules, what we could and couldn't do. And only certain Spider-Man villains could show up twice or three times, and you'll only get to use it. So we had to pull from the wider range of Marvel Universe,
Yeah.
which really kind of also broke up the kind of the chain of the retelling of the same Spider-Man stories. Spectacular Spider-Man is a perfectly crystallized telling of Spider-Man comics in that way. But Joe Quesada and Jeff had it asked, we would like to take a look at Spider-Man as if he was first introduced in animation. Still bring all of the things, that are great about Spider-Man, but let's not use the comic book as our
Basis.
for the stories. So I mean, we started thinking about it. Stanley used to talk directly to the audience in the blogs, Hey True Believers and stuff like that. So Spider-Man should break the fourth wall and talk directly to the viewers. We put him back in high school. He had been in college and stuff, and all of these other things. So we wanted to kind of go back to the basics on certain things, and also some of his relationships and whatnot. But since we couldn't use certain villains, all of a sudden, we were bringing in other things, and we were finding these really fun stories that started to kick in. And this is just percolating up before the Avengers movie. So some of the stuff that we were privy to of where they were going to go with some of that, because we were getting the insider information, we would start doing some of the prep work with Thor and a couple of the other characters who would show up, which was a lot of fun. But during this point, this was the big story. We were looking for these kind of obscure. We had done a Peter Porker one where he turned into a spider pig, Spider Ham, and it was tied in with Thor and all of these other things. But it's like, hey, I was just sitting next to Steve, and I said, we should bring in Big Hero 6. That would be a lot of fun. And Joe Quesada, who was just on his PDA, looked up and he goes, what do you know about Big Hero 6? I was like, oh, well, we created him back, for Alpha Flight. What? And then Jeff, who was on the phone, said, what? You guys what? We need to talk. Because back in those days, we had created that stuff, but Marvel was up for grabs as far as, so there was no creator-owned paperwork that had been signed, and they were already well in development. We didn't know with Big Hero 6 over at Pixar, over at the Disney Pixar side of stuff. So they had on their own. This had nothing to do with us. They had on their own looked over the catalog and said, that's the one we want to do. We want to do Big Hero 6. So this was just a different completely different track. Ben 10 hadn't happened, but Hero 6 would have happened on its own without our impetus because of the work we had done earlier.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How it kind of comes full circle, and then
Yeah.
just because you're in this meeting, you find out, oh, like, no, we did that. So
Yeah.
it's so funny how that works out. And
It was very bizarre. And so, then once the paperwork got figured out, they brought us in and showed us what they were doing. We told them all, we went and had some meetings with them and talked about where the initial ideas came from and why, and the relationship between Hero and Baymax and stuff like that. And they had already kind of taken a lot of this stuff because what we had done is we wrote up a pretty extensive Bible, just Steve and I, back for Marvel, because they wanted to, at the time, they wanted to turn it into a series, and they did. Gus Vasquez and Scott Lobdell did Big Hero 6, Sunfire and Big Hero 6 stories. But all of that stuff, because we were doing Alpha Flight at the time. They wanted us to do that too. It's like, well, we're not going to do 2 books right at a time. And they need to be out tomorrow because their schedules are really screwy over there. So those guys just took our Bibles and wrote up the stories, and they did a great job. They added some stuff. They added a great villain into it. It had Silver Samurai and Sunfire, which were Marvel characters, who then later on were taken out, and Chris Claremont had come in and done Wasabi. And
how cool is that Chris Claremont is now working on stuff you guys created, and you were working on stuff he created. It's cool that
it was a dream. Go take that. Couldn't have told my 78 back in 1978. The little 14-year-old brought in his portfolio that one day that was going to be happening. So
that's just like mind blowing as a kid to have.
Oh yeah, no, but it wasn't lost on me either. I mean, he's as far as I'm concerned, he's one of the guys that he's a father of modern comics, as far as I'm concerned. It's a great. It was great. We actually had run-in. Chris has gone through a lot of different stages, and at one point he was kind of a wandering editor over at Marvel, and he was the editor for Alpha Flight for us, and him and John have had their own past, and so Alpha Flight was something that Chris wasn't allowed to be part of at some point. So I think when he got in and was an editor, he was a little harder on us than he needed to be when we were on it, because I think he wanted to, I don't know, he had his ideas about Alpha Flight. But now we were all friends. We're working on Big Hero 6. So he brought in Wasabi and he brought in Fred. Those were the
characters he created.
Characters, yeah. And then, so then Big Hero 6, became this big giant monster. And I'll tell you the little insider baseball here. Having your name attached to 10 years of a #1 rated cartoon show on Cartoon Network, Ben 10, and having your name attached to a Disney movie for a week is about the same level of media impact.
Wow.
It was amazing.
That's
how,
crazy.
Disney's marketing machine is so massive and so powerful that there isn't a person on the planet Earth that doesn't hear about whatever the new show is.
Wow, that's so cool.
When they want to. And so that really kind of kicked us into another whole gear, and now we're working on a bunch of different licensed shows.